It started with a hotel mix-up, 2 coworkers, 1 bed. No big deal, until he turned to me and said, "No one ever has to know." In that moment, everything shifted. Years of silence cracked open. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if we were just sharing a room, or finally facing the truth we'd both been running from.
This isn't the story I thought I'd be telling, but once you hear it, you might start questioning your own version of just friends. It was supposed to be simple.
A 3-day work trip, a professional marketing conference, 2 colleagues representing their department. 2 rooms, 2 beds, no drama.
No distraction, just business, that was the plan.
Until we stepped up to the hotel counter in downtown Chicago and were told very apologetically, "I'm sorry, gentlemen. There's been a booking error. Only 1 room is available." I remember glancing at Nathan beside me, his expression unreadable, his posture straight. He didn't say anything right away. Just ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him make dozens of times in high-stress meetings. It was his thinking tick. Nathan Hayes was composed. Always. He was the kind of man who never forgot a name, who wore cologne that lingered just the right amount, who sent thank you emails after internal presentations. We were colleagues. Friends maybe, but definitely not close, at least not until now. "1 room?" Nathan asked calmly. "Yes, sir, a king bed." "City View. I've called every nearby hotel, all fully booked because of 3 overlapping conventions," the clerk explained. There was a pause, long enough for my anxiety to start whispering scenarios I didn't want to imagine. And then Nathan said, with the kind of finality that closed doors and opened others, "We'll take it." That sentence landed harder than it should have. 20 minutes later, we walked into our room. It was modern, quiet, clean, too clean. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a small sitting area, minimalist decor. And right in the middle, 1 very large, very unavoidable king-sized bed. I busied myself with the safe tasks, taking off my jacket, placing my bag in the corner, pretending this wasn't weird. "I can take the floor," I offered, instantly regretting how quickly I spoke. Nathan shook his head. "Don't be ridiculous. It's just sleeping, Aaron." "We're both adults. Just sleeping, just coworkers, just 2 nights." But that bed felt enormous and intimate at the same time, and standing there with Nathan, this man I'd admired, respected, and maybe secretly thought about more than I should have, I could feel the rules I lived by starting to blur. You see, I'd had a thing for Nathan for 2 years. Silently, privately, carefully tucked away under layers of professionalism and logic. It wasn't just that he was attractive, though he was. It was the way he handled pressure, the way he actually listened when people spoke, the way he didn't perform kindness. He just was kind, but he was straight, as far as I knew. Which meant I'd resigned myself to admiring from a safe, emotional distance. No lines crossed, no awkward moments. And now we were standing on the edge of something, uncertain. That evening, we powered through the first day of the conference. Networking, presentations, back-to-back meetings. I kept myself busy enough not to think too hard about the night ahead. But when we returned to the room, all the noise of the day faded. And there it was again, the bed, waiting. Nathan grabbed a change of clothes and headed to the shower first. "Take your time," he said over his shoulder, casual. Like we hadn't just signed an emotional contract of intimacy by agreeing to share that space. I changed quickly while he was gone, t-shirt, pajama pants, and pretended not to notice my pulse hammering in my ears. When he came out, his hair was damp, and he was wearing nothing but boxers and a tank top. I focused very hard on the carpet. "Your turn," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. The shower helped, warm water washing away the day. But not the nerves. Never the nerves. When I stepped back into the room, Nathan was already in bed, facing the far side, the left half of the bed untouched. My half. I slid in quietly, careful not to let any part of me touch him. "Temperature okay?" he asked. "Perfect," I replied. even though I couldn't have told you if it was freezing or boiling. Silence stretched between us. The kind of silence that wasn't empty but full, of tension, of unspoken things. I lay there staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of every movement he made beside me. Every breath. Every shift. This was dangerous, this was fine, this was not fine. Aaron? Nathan's voice was low, soft. Yeah? Can I ask you something personal? My heart flipped. Sure. Are you seeing anyone? I blinked into the darkness. No, why? He hesitated. Just curious. You never mentioned dating. I'm private. It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was, I'd stopped looking, because I was too busy trying not to fall deeper for someone who I couldn't have. What about you? I asked. Nathan sighed. Same. Haven't dated anyone seriously in a while. Why not? There was a longer pause this time, and when he finally spoke, the texture of his voice had changed. Because I've been distracted by someone I can't have. The air between us shifted. Suddenly the silence wasn't just silence, it was loaded. Hanging, cracking open. A coworker? I asked, too carefully. Nathan didn't answer right away, and I didn't breathe while waiting. Finally, he said, someone who would probably run screaming if they knew how I felt. That's when the line between possible and impossible started to bend. That's when I wondered, not for the first time, but maybe for the first time seriously, if the person Nathan couldn't stop thinking about was lying next to him right now. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. There was something sacred about the silence between us now, like the next sentence could change everything. Or nothing at all. Nathan had just admitted he'd been thinking about someone he couldn't have. A coworker. Someone off limits. Someone who'd run screaming if they knew. And I was lying beside him in the dark, holding my breath. He didn't know it, but he had just opened a door I'd sealed shut years ago. A door labeled "Don't go there," and now every heartbeat was an invitation to walk through it. I didn't ask, is it me? I couldn't. Instead, I said, have you ever thought about telling them? Nathan shifted in the bed beside me, the sheets rustling softly. Sometimes, he said. But it feels dangerous. Why? He let out a quiet breath. Because I've never felt like this before. Not for someone like them. My throat tightened. Like them. The phrase wasn't random. It carried something deeper, heavier, a kind of coded vulnerability. What do you mean? I asked carefully. Nathan was silent again. Then, I mean, I've never been attracted to someone who wasn't a woman before. And this, it's messing with my head. I turned my face slightly toward him. Not enough to break the fragile comfort of the dark, but enough to let him know I was still listening. Really listening. He continued. I thought I knew who I was, what I wanted. And then, this person walks into my life and starts rewiring everything I thought was settled. I wanted to say same. I wanted to reach across the space between us, take his hand and let my heart speak for once. But fear was a patient thing. It had lived in me so long it felt like home. Still, something about his honesty, the rawness of it, gave me courage. What would you do, I asked, if you knew they felt the same way? Nathan's voice dropped even lower. I don't know. Probably ruin everything. I gave a small, humorless laugh. That's one option. Or maybe, he said, I'd stop pretending. Stop hiding behind professional boundaries and outdated assumptions. There it was, the soft unraveling of everything we thought we'd kept tightly bound. Nathan turned toward me then. I could feel it, even if I couldn't see his face, his warmth, his attention, his hesitation. Aaron, he said. Yeah? The person I'm talking about, it's not what you'd expect. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs. I swallowed, suddenly unsure of whether I was still dreaming. "Then tell me," I whispered. He hesitated, then said something that split me wide open. "It's you." 3 words, 2 years of silence, one impossible truth. I didn't speak, I couldn't. My breath caught in my throat. My thoughts scattered like startled birds. "I didn't mean to fall for you," Nathan said. "I didn't even realize it was happening." "It started slow, the way you laugh when no one else is around, how you notice the things people try to hide, how you always give people the benefit of the doubt, even when they don't deserve it." His voice wavered, just slightly. "I used to think I was just grateful for your friendship, but then it started feeling like more. And it scared the hell out of me." I finally turned fully toward him, my chest tight, my mouth dry. "You really mean that?" His hand found mine under the covers, warm. Certain, trembling just a little. "I mean every word." I closed my eyes, then opened them again, because this wasn't a dream, not anymore. "I've been in love with you for 2 years, I said quietly. Nathan didn't react at first. Then his thumb began tracing slow, rhythmic circles across the back of my hand. 2 years, he repeated. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because you were straight. Because we worked together." "Because I thought if I told you, I'd lose the one thing I knew I had, your respect." Nathan shifted even closer now. I've never respected anyone more. We lay there in a silence that felt less like absence and more like presence. The kind of stillness that exists when everything unsaid is finally spoken. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if this was a beginning, an interlude, or a beautiful complication. But I knew this. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone in how I felt. We stayed like that for a long time. Hands intertwined, hearts open, the city buzzing quietly outside the window while our own little world began to tilt on its axis. Eventually, Nathan whispered, "I don't know what this means. I don't have answers, but I know I don't want to go back to pretending." My voice was soft but steady. "Then let's figure it out. Together." He exhaled, a quiet, relieved sound. I'd like that. There was still so much we hadn't said, still so much to risk, but something had shifted, something irreversible. I didn't fall asleep right away. I lay there listening to his breathing, feeling the steady pressure of his fingers around mine, wondering how something so terrifying could also feel so safe. And somewhere between fear and hope, I realized this night had already changed us. Forever. His hand was still in mine. That simple fact, skin on skin, steady, warm, felt surreal. Like holding on to something I'd only dreamed about until now. I repeated the words in my mind, over and over. "It's you." Nathan had said it like it cost him everything, and gave him everything back in return. I could barely believe it. He was the one person I thought I could never have. And now, he was lying inches from me, telling me I was the one he couldn't stop thinking about. I turned fully toward him in the dark. I wanted to see him, but the room was too dim, so I listened instead. To his breathing, the pauses in his voice, the trembling honesty in his words. He squeezed my hand again, like he wasn't sure if I believed him. "I know this must sound insane," Nathan said, voice low and thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been here before." "Not like this. You don't have to know everything right now," I said gently. "Neither do I." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I keep asking myself, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just confused?" I understood that fear. I'd lived in it for years, but what I felt now wasn't confusion. It was clarity, quiet and overwhelming. "I think people get confused when they try to make their feelings fit a label," I said. "But what if this isn't about definitions? What if it's just about us?" Nathan let out a breath like he'd been holding it for hours. "I want it to be." There was a vulnerability in his voice I'd never heard before. Nathan, the confident, polished, in-control version of him, was nowhere to be found in this moment, and I didn't miss that version. I loved this one more. He shifted closer, until I could feel the outline of his knee brushing against mine beneath the blanket. "Do you remember that night we stayed late working on the Morrison pitch?" he asked suddenly. I smiled in the dark. "Of course. We ordered Chinese, drank 3 pots of coffee, and saved the project from crashing. You fell asleep at your desk," he said, laughing softly. "I stood there for almost 5 minutes just watching you." I froze. "Why?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because you looked so peaceful. Maybe because that was the first time I realized how much I liked being near you, even when nothing was happening. There it was again. That quiet, dangerous warmth in my chest, the one I had buried 100 times before, always convincing myself it wasn't mutual, that it couldn't be mutual. And yet here we were. "I used to watch you too," I said, "in meetings. At lunch, after work, not in a creepy way, just trying to memorize the little things. The way you rub your thumb against your coffee cup when you're thinking, the way your eyes soften when you're being honest." Nathan let out a soft laugh. "You noticed all that?" "I noticed everything," I whispered. He reached up and slowly his fingers brushed the side of my face. The touch was tentative, reverent, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed, but he was hoping I wouldn't pull away. I didn't. I leaned into it. "I want to kiss you," he said, voice barely audible. "But I don't want to mess this up." "You're not," I said. I don't know what comes next. I don't even know how to be this version of myself outside this room. "Then stay in this room for now," I said. "With me. Just for tonight, let it be simple." He hesitated, then nodded, like he was agreeing to a promise neither of us could quite articulate. And then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned in. His lips touched mine, soft at first, cautious, testing. But when I kissed him back, when I let go of 2 years of restraint, he responded with something deeper. Like exhaling after holding your breath too long. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't desperate. It was real. When we pulled apart, both of us breathless, his forehead rested against mine. "I've never kissed a guy before," he murmured. "But I can't imagine ever wanting to kiss anyone else now." "You don't have to have it all figured out," I reminded him. "This doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real." "I don't want to go back to pretending," he said. "You don't have to." Another long silence settled between us, but this one wasn't awkward. It was full of everything we were both still learning how to say. "I'm scared," he confessed. "So am I. What if we ruin everything? Work? Our friendship. What if—" I stopped him with a small squeeze of his hand. "Nathan, we already crossed the line. We're just deciding whether to walk it or retreat from it, and I'm not retreating." He looked at me, really looked. Even in the dark, I could feel his eyes on mine. "Then walk it with me," he said. "I've been waiting to." He smiled, a real one. Not his boardroom smile, not the one he used with clients, but the one I'd only seen a handful of times, on accident, in unguarded moments. It was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in years. We lay there a little longer, close. Still holding hands, still processing. Nathan didn't let go of me once. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to predict the future or protect my heart or hold anything back. I was just there, in that bed, next to him, feeling like I'd finally arrived somewhere I hadn't even known I'd been searching for. Whatever happened tomorrow, we'd figure it out. But tonight was ours. His lips were still on mine when I realized the world hadn't ended. It hadn't exploded, no alarms had gone off. The earth hadn't shifted beneath us, at least not literally. But inside me, something massive had changed. Because kissing Nathan Hayes was nothing like I imagined. It wasn't awkward or experimental. It wasn't confused or rushed. It was honest, soft, focused. intimate in a way that had absolutely nothing to do with lust and everything to do with years of restrained emotion finally exhaling. When we pulled apart, he didn't speak right away. His forehead rested against mine, his breath uneven. One hand stayed curled gently at the back of my neck, thumb lightly tracing the edge of my jaw. I didn't want to break the silence. Because that silence wasn't empty, it was charged, filled with something we'd both been too afraid to name until now. Nathan's voice was low, barely above a whisper. That didn't feel wrong. I swallowed hard. It didn't. I thought I'd panic, he admitted. That I'd kiss you and suddenly realize I'd made a huge mistake. But, I asked. But instead, I felt like I finally did something that made sense. He exhaled slowly, his breath brushing against my skin. You know what's crazy? He added. What? I've never kissed anyone like that, where it felt like home. My throat tightened. I'd kissed before. I'd dated, I'd had relationships, but nothing had ever felt like that. Not like him. I didn't think you'd actually do it, I whispered. Nathan smiled softly. I didn't think I would either, but the second you told me you'd loved me for 2 years, I couldn't not kiss you. There was a pause. Then he laughed lightly. God, that sounds so cheesy. I smiled. It sounds honest. He leaned back slightly, just enough to look at me, eyes searching. So, what now? A fair question. Because even though we were wrapped in a moment that felt untouchable, reality waited just beyond the hotel curtains. We were co-workers. We had jobs, a department, HR policies, people who assumed things about who we were and who we were supposed to be. And yet, in that moment, all I could see was him, his uncertainty, his courage. The way he kept looking at me like he still couldn't believe what was happening. What do you want to happen? I asked. He didn't hesitate. I want to keep kissing you. That made me laugh, and he laughed too. But then his expression softened again. And after that, I want to figure out what this means. For us, for me, because everything feels different now. It is different now, I said. Are you scared? He asked. Yes, I replied, but not of you. Same. He lay back against the pillows, still facing me, and our fingers found each other again without thinking. There was something oddly comforting about the way our hands kept gravitating toward each other, as if our bodies knew what our minds were still trying to process. I've spent so much time trying to keep things simple, he said, trying to live inside the lines. And now that I've crossed one, I don't want to go back. Then don't. I don't know how to be this version of myself publicly, he admitted. You don't have to be. Not yet. Just be it here, with me, that's enough. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment. Thank you. For what? For not freaking out. For not laughing. For not treating me like a science experiment. I reached up and touched his cheek, the gesture instinctive. You're not a project, you're a person, and no part of you is too much or too confusing for me. His eyes opened again. And this time when he looked at me, there was no hesitation, just quiet wonder. I think I'm falling for you, he said. I smiled. Too late, I already beat you to it. He laughed, and it was one of those rare, unguarded sounds that only came out when no one else was around. Then, slowly, he leaned in again and kissed me. Longer this time. Deeper. More certain. And when we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his and whispered, "We don't have to figure out tomorrow tonight." But I want to. Why? Because, for the first time in a long time, I want something that much. We lay in silence after that. Wrapped in sheets, wrapped in emotion, wrapped in something that felt dangerously like hope. And as the city buzzed outside, as lights glowed from distant windows, I let my eyes close, not from exhaustion, but because I finally felt safe enough to sleep. with him beside me, with his hand still in mine. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the window, and Nathan was still there, still next to me, still real. And when he opened his eyes and saw me looking, he smiled. Not like he was surprised I was still there, but like he was grateful. "Morning," he said, voice rough with sleep. "Morning. How are you feeling?" I paused, then told him the truth. Like everything changed, and I'm not sure I'm ready, but I want to be. Nathan reached out, fingers brushing mine. "Then we'll go slow, or fast, whatever you need. I just need this," I said. "You, now." His smile softened. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, with no titles, no plan, no answers, just heartbeats and eye contact, I knew. The first kiss wasn't the end of something safe. It was the beginning of something true. The morning after didn't feel like a cliché. It didn't feel like waking up to regret, or awkwardness, or confusion. It felt like possibility. Sunlight filtered through the hotel curtains, casting soft lines across Nathan's sleeping face. His arm was draped around me, loose, natural, like it had always belonged there. For a moment, I didn't move. I just watched him. Not in disbelief, but in recognition of how something could feel so new and yet so familiar at the same time. When he stirred, his eyes opened slowly, finding mine. And then he smiled, sleepy, real. "Hey," he said, voice rough with the morning. "Hey," I replied, unsure if my heart would ever beat normally again. "How do you feel?" he asked, hand gently tightening around my waist. I paused, considering the question. "Different," I said honestly, in a good way. Like I've been holding my breath for 2 years and finally let it out." He nodded, his gaze softening. "Same." We lay there in the silence of shared understanding, bodies close, thoughts even closer. No need to define anything. No pressure to promise everything, just the quiet truth of two people realizing they weren't alone in their longing. Eventually, we got up, showered, dressed, packed our things. There were still a few hours left of the conference, but it felt insignificant compared to what had happened between us. Still, we returned to the professional world like nothing had changed. Suits on, name tags clipped, smiles practiced. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Every glance across the conference table held new meaning. Every accidental brush of fingers when passing each other a pen felt deliberate. Every shared laugh held the echo of the night before. And it was both thrilling and terrifying. That evening, as we boarded the plane back home, Nathan took the window seat. I sat beside him, laptop open but forgotten. He looked out at the clouds for a long time before speaking. "So, what happens now?" he asked quietly. I turned toward him. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to keep seeing you," he said, "outside of work, like real dates. I want to explore this, honestly." I reached for his hand between the seats. "Then let's do that." He nodded slowly. "We'll have to tell HR. Eventually," I agreed, "but we can do it right. We don't have to rush." He looked at me, eyes full of something between nerves and hope. "I don't want this to be a secret, but I'm also not ready to be a headline in the office gossip thread." "We don't have to be," I said. "Let's give it space. Let it grow." And so we did. The first few weeks back at work were a balancing act. We kept things professional. No touching, no lingering glances. But we also found ways to stay connected. Subtle texts, shared coffee breaks, weekend plans whispered over Slack. It was new, but it wasn't fragile. There was strength in the foundation we'd built before this ever turned romantic. We knew how to communicate. We trusted each other. We respected each other's ambition, and maybe that's why it worked. Our first official date was a Friday night. Dinner at a quiet Italian place Nathan had always liked, but never brought anyone to. He showed up with flowers, nervous.
beautiful, determined. We talked about everything but work, movies, childhood, favorite books, what scared us, what saved us. And when he walked me to my door, he kissed me like someone who'd finally stopped doubting. After that, things unfolded naturally. Sunday mornings became our time. Coffee at his place, lazy breakfasts in pajamas, his playlist humming in the background while we planned nothing at all. He let me see the messier sides of him, the overthinking, the doubt, the days he didn't have it all together. And I let him see mine, the fear of being too much or not enough, the years of hiding that had left scars even I didn't fully understand. But we never rushed it. We let the relationship breathe. We checked in. We showed up. Coming out as a couple to close friends was easier than we expected. Most people just smiled. Some even said, "Finally." It turned out we hadn't been as subtle as we thought. Work was more complicated. We agreed to inform HR after a month, once we knew we were serious. The conversation was awkward but professional. They appreciated the transparency. Policies were explained. Boundaries were discussed. And then we went back to our desks. Different, but also the same. Surprisingly, being honest about our relationship didn't damage our reputations. If anything, it made us better. We collaborated more seamlessly, trusted each other more deeply.
Our dynamic shifted, but only in ways that made us stronger. Of course, there were challenges, there were moments of doubt.
What if people treated us differently? What if this changed how we were seen professionally? But every time we faced a new fear, we came back to this. We were building something real. And that was worth navigating the discomfort. One night, 3 months in, Nathan looked at me across his kitchen table and said, "I think I'm happier than I've ever been." And I believed him, because I was too. Happiness didn't look like fireworks or dramatic declarations. It looked like late-night grocery runs, shared playlists, morning kisses before work, and holding hands when no one was watching. Love had evolved from something unspoken to something shared, quiet, consistent, and deeply true. And as we lay in bed that night, curled around each other like two people who finally stopped pretending, I whispered, "I'm proud of us." Nathan kissed my shoulder and said, "Me too." Not because we had it all figured out, but because we were figuring it out together. And sometimes, that's all love really needs. Some moments you can trace back like a thread, clear, deliberate, undeniable. For me, that thread begins in a hotel room. One bed. One sentence. One truth I never thought I'd hear. No one ever has to know. But we did know. And what we've built since then? It's become something worth remembering. And worth protecting. Now, looking back from the place we stand, it's easy to say it was meant to be. But back then, nothing felt certain. We weren't just crossing into new territory. We were shedding layers we thought were permanent. I was learning to stop hiding. He was learning to start becoming. And somehow we met in the middle of all that becoming. At first, it was little things. The comfort of waking up next to someone who saw me without filters. The joy of sharing routines. Who makes coffee? Who leaves the towel on the floor? Who hums in the shower? The strange mix of excitement and fear when coworkers started guessing before we were ready to tell them. Then it was the bigger things. Meeting his family. Coming out again, not for the first time, but somehow for the most important time. Learning to say, "This is who I love," without apology or explanation. The truth is, I'd spent years preparing myself for a kind of love that was safe. Expected, approved, but what I got instead was something real. And real love doesn't always ask for permission. It shows up messy. It challenges you. It asks you to be honest, not just with your partner, but with yourself. Nathan taught me that. He didn't mean to. He wasn't trying to be someone's teacher. He was just trying to figure himself out, one vulnerable step at a time. And I got to witness it. To walk beside it, to grow because of it. Sometimes we talk about that night, our first kiss. Not in a dramatic way, but with a kind of quiet reverence. Because it wasn't just a kiss, it was a release. A beginning, a reckoning. Nathan once said he wished we hadn't waited so long. That maybe we lost time, but I don't think we did. We needed those years. To build trust, to build friendship, to build ourselves into people who were ready when the moment finally came. Not perfect, not fearless, just ready enough. Now, months into this relationship, the fear hasn't disappeared completely. But it's different. It's not fear of being seen. It's the fear that comes when you realize how much you have to lose. Because it matters that much. And still, we choose each other. Every morning. Every meeting, every date night, every disagreement. We choose this because love is a choice, not just once, but over and over. In the quiet, in the noise, in the mundane. Love shows up when you hold hands under the table because you can't stop smiling. When you apologize first, even if you're only 5% wrong. When you text thinking of you at 2 p.m. on a random Tuesday just to make them laugh. And also, when you're silent, but their presence speaks louder than words ever could. Nathan and I still argue sometimes. About who forgot to order groceries, about what movie to watch, about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. But now, every argument is wrapped in the unspoken promise that we'll come back to each other, that the relationship isn't fragile, it's flexible, and that makes all the difference. Because when someone sees you fully, mess, doubts, overthinking and all, and still reaches for your hand, that's where safety lives. One time, Nathan looked at me across our kitchen table, sunlight catching in his hair, and said, "Do you realize we built this from a single moment of honesty?" And I did, because honesty is where love begins. Not with grand gestures or perfect timing, but with a quiet, terrified, sacred truth whispered in the dark. I think I'm falling for you. If I could go back to that night, to that version of me who was scared to speak, scared to hope, scared to feel, I'd tell him, say it. Say it because life is too short for pretend comfort. Say it because fear is no match for truth. Say it because some things are worth the risk. And Nathan, he was worth it. He still is. Now, as we walk forward, day by day, choice by choice, I don't know where this story ends. But I know how it continues. With two people who once thought love might ruin everything, and instead discovered it could rebuild everything in a better way. If I've learned anything, it's this. Love isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to move anyway, together. Even if you don't have all the answers. Even if the path isn't clear. Even if your heart's still catching up to your courage. So if you're listening to this and wondering if your story could shift, if your moment could come, know that it might not look dramatic. It might not come with fireworks. It might come in a quiet room, late at night. It might come in the form of a friend, a colleague. Someone you never let yourself consider until they turn to you and say, "No one ever has to know." But what if they did? And what if they were happy for you? Because sometimes, the best love stories start with the courage to stop hiding, and the belief that what's real is always worth the risk. Some love stories don't begin with sparks. They begin in silence, in subtle glances, in years of just friends, in the spaces between what we feel and what we dare to say. But then something happens. One moment. One sentence, one kiss, and everything shifts. What started as a secret, shared in whispers beneath hotel sheets, became a truth too powerful to keep hidden. Because some secrets don't stay secrets. Some become confessions. Some become courage, and the very best of them become celebrations. Nathan and I never planned this. We didn't map it out. But that's the thing about real love. It interrupts. It doesn't wait for perfect timing or permission. It shows up in the middle of your careful life and says, "Here I am. Are you ready to risk comfort for something real?" And that's what we did. We risked it. And in doing so, we found something honest and deep and worth holding on to, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. So if you're out there holding back your truth, if you've got a version of "no one ever has to know" whispering inside you, ask yourself, what if someone did know? What if they saw you, really saw you, and didn't turn away?
What if your story, like ours, is just waiting for the right moment to begin? Because the people who love you, they don't need you to be perfect, they just need you to be real. And when you're ready to stop hiding, you might find, like we did, that the world is far more accepting than you feared. And far more beautiful than you imagined, because sometimes the truth sets you free. And sometimes the truth falls asleep next to you in a king-size bed and brings you coffee in the morning. If this story spoke to you, even just a little, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because there's more where this came from. More stories that remind us, love is not just for the movies. It's for all of us, and it's worth every risk.